everyone, welcome back to the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast with Bobby Sylvester and Mike Tagliere. Our guest today is Jody Smith of GridironExperts.com. We're going to be talking about players to avoid this season in fantasy football. Jody, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely, Bobby. It's good to be on with you guys again. I'm big fans of Fantasy Pros as it stands, and then, of course, your podcast great. So it's good to be on with you guys again.
Thanks, Jody. So you guys got any 4th of July plans?
Well, we got to go actually see fireworks last night. I don't know why. For some reason, they did it the night before. So it sounds like the three of us, my son and my wife and I, are going to go to the pool later today. But he has been a little bit sick, so I'm not sure if that's going to play out. But that's the plans.
Yeah, what you got going, Tags?
Well, there's 2 barbecues. So my wife's parents are throwing a barbecue. My mom's throwing a barbecue. I'm recording 2 podcasts. I just got doing one before this that was about an hour and a half long. So my family is like, are we going to be able to spend time with you today? And I'm like, well, this is just a normal day and a day of a fantasy writer. But Jody, it's good to have you back on. I think the last time we had Jody on, we did the mock draft episode. And I'm proud to say that, didn't I say that Mitch Trubisky was going to go to the Bears in that episode?
You did indeed. Yeah, you didn't call the trade up from 3 to 2. I mean, we would have called you crazy, but, it did work out. Well, I don't know. You can call it working out if you want. I think that every team in the NFL should have waited till the second round for a quarterback because I don't think any of them are very good. But, we can agree to disagree until we see the performances.
For sure. I like Trubisky, but I understand why I understand the hate on him, but it's just like the last time we had him on. So I'm looking forward to this episode because I feel like Jody just brings that out in me. Jody's one of my best friends in the industry. I consider him a personal friend. We talk outside of football stuff, and Jody's an awesome dude.
So what do you guys talk about? Like baseball and basketball? I don't really know what else there is to talk about.
Oh, we talk about kids and stuff like that, and our families, and what we're up to, advice in life, and things like that. So like I said, I consider him a personal friend.
Guys, every 4th of July, I play full contact pool volleyball. I know it sounds kind of weird, but you can go under the net and push and pull and tackle. You can go over the net and through the net. And I just got back from that. So I'm all fiery. So I think this episode's going to be a lot of fun. We do have one listener mailbag question. I know it's not a listener mailbag show, but I wanted to talk about this one today before I forgot what I wanted to say. It's from Frank in Michigan. And if y'all want to send in listener mailbag questions, it's mailbag@fantasypros.com. And he wants to know, he says he's got Le'Veon Bell that he can keep in the 2nd round or Jay Ajayi in the 12th. How do you guys look at these kind of trades, and what would you advise him to keep here?
Jody, I'll let you tackle this one first. I have my answer, but I want to hear what Jody thinks.
Well, generally in something like that, when you're deciding a protection that comes with a draft pick, simply to me, it comes down to value. I look at both of those running backs. Le'Veon Bell, surefire, number 1, number 2 running back. A 2nd round price on him is actually pretty good, but Jay Ajayi for a 12th round, that's fantastic because you're looking at where Ajayi is going typically in most drafts. He's a 2nd round pick, maybe even towards the top part of the 2nd round. So you're getting a 10 round discount on him to take him for the 12th. So as much as I would hate to throw back Le'Veon Bell, Jay Ajayi for a 12th, that's just too good for me.
For real. And if you're in a league where you can trade him, trade Le'Veon Bell or trade Jay Ajayi at that price, maybe you can get a haul and get a real nice deal.
So I'm gonna go opposite of you guys because Bobby, I'm pretty sure that I think you're on the Ajayi side of this one. I don't know why I'm trouble saying that right now, but I'm gonna go the opposite way because most people, when they answer keeper league questions, they don't think about it in the grand scheme of things. Where he didn't tell us how many people are being kept, but we're gonna assume that it's just one player. So a 2nd round pick is behind the 12 players that are kept. So we're essentially talking about a 3rd round pick in order to lose Le'Veon Bell, whereas Jay Ajayi is right around still a 12th round because all the players would be gone.
Kind of a 3rd round pick. That would assume that everybody's keeping a 1st round level player.
You would, right. We're talking about general area would be 3rd round because it's or something like that. You know what I mean? So for me, I'm still taking Le'Veon Bell because the reason is because Jay Ajayi, despite what he did last year and despite what we're looking forward to him to do, I was recently doing our offensive line article that's going to be coming out, I believe, next week. I'm going to release it. And the Miami Dolphins offensive line it's got some issues to it. Last year when they dealt with offensive line problems, Jay Ajayi really struggled. When he really did well, it was against the Bills and some other bottom 10 run defenses. So when you look at his schedule going forward, it's a little bit tricky trying to figure him out. They do have the receiving weapons. There's a lot of questions here, but Le'Veon Bell, he's a guy that if in this league, I'm guessing you could probably keep him forever if you're talking about keeping him for a 2nd round pick. So for me, Le'Veon Bell is like a surefire one, like the one that I do not want to let go. I want to hold on to him for his entire career and try and find the next Jay Ajayi in the 12th round this year.
If you can keep him for a 2nd round pick his whole career, I think I might lean that direction, but it's really close because this is the way I like to think of it. I mean, if you keep Bell, you're losing a second-round pick. So you just add that on to Ajayi, and if you keep Ajayi, you lose a 12th-round pick, so you add it to Bell. Would you rather have Bell and a 12th-round pick, or let's say 13th, okay? Bell and a 13th-round pick, or Ajayi and a 3rd-round pick? For me, it's really not even close. I mean, once you consider you can keep a guy for 5 years, if that's the rule in that league and it doesn't cost you a first the next 4 years, maybe I'd keep Bell. Otherwise, I think it's a landslide. I'd rather have Ajayi in the 3rd.
Well, in the 3rd round, like the way we're looking at the 3rd round this year, there's a bunch of high upside guys, but nobody that's a surefire thing. You're talking about Allen Robinson, DeAndre Hopkins, Sammy Watkins, like some of these players that I do like, but it's not like they're a sure thing. Now, granted, I do understand the value, and I understand why you'd want to do that, but if you're only keeping one player, I will always take the best player in the deal, and you are getting a deal.
You're telling me you'd rather have Le'Veon Bell and some random guy, Marlon Mack,
and John Brown,
and John Brown. Okay, Le'Veon Bell and John Brown, then Ajayi and Sammy Watkins.
Yeah, I would.
Wow, man.
Yeah, and a keeper.
I want to trade with you really bad. We need to figure out a way to make one of these deals happen. We're going to be in leagues.
We're in 2 leagues together this year, Bobby. So this is going to happen.
All right, I will draft Le'Veon Bell and give him to you for my 2nd and 3rd round pick.
Okay.
All right, deal. It's a deal. We'll figure out a way to make that happen. What would you do, Jody? Would you rather have Le'Veon Bell than those two?
No, probably not. Though Tags pointed out John Brown, who I'm high on. But one of the things that still, and I know this may be something that nobody really talks about, or maybe everyone talks about it, is the fact that if Le'Veon Bell messes up one time, forgets a drug test, or just does something stupid, then he's gone for a significant amount of time. And for me, that kind of tarnishes his dynasty value. I know he's been fine for the last several months, and maybe he's finally got it all figured out. But that is something that it's right there, and it weighs on his potential value. Now, not that long ago, we were worried about Jay Ajayi's knees. I mean, coming out of college, out of Boise State, wasn't it? He was supposedly no cartilage, knee on, bone on bone, but it hasn't been an issue so far. Tags was he was right to point out the offensive line issues, but in a simplistic way of looking at things, I just prefer the value. And you're seeing Jay Ajayi now going as I don't know, as high as Scott Fish, as I single-handedly made him go from like RB7 all the way up to like RB4, RB5. So to me, it's a nice consolation prize to go from the running back number 2 to the running back 5, 6, 7, somewhere in there, and to gain all that value between the 2nd versus the 12th.
Yeah, I mean, if you get Le'Veon Bell and you don't have a 2nd or 3rd round pick, basically, and he gets hurt, your season's over. If you lose Jay Ajayi and you still got Sammy Watkins, you've still got your 1st, you've still got your 2nd, I mean, you're probably still in pretty good shape. And I like to have as many of the top 4 round picks as I can get. So I'm all for trading my 1st round pick if I can get that kind of value.
No, it's fair. It's a good debate though. So it's a great question, man. Thanks for sending it in. And like I said, so Jay Ajayi, the knee on knee thing, that's why he fell in the draft, is because they say 3-4 years down the road he may not be able to walk. Like it's not a good condition to have.
Sad,
so
man.
it is really sad, and that's where you wonder if guys might hang it up early, or what. It's tough to say, man. But if you guys recall, the Dolphins tried to sign C.J. Anderson last offseason, so I think that they'd be. I don't think that they would be totally opposed to saying, well, Jay Ajayi struggles. We'll use more of Damian Williams and Kenyon Drake and whatever. You know what I mean? So
yeah, it's a really good point. Okay, guys, well, we're going to talk about players that we want to avoid today. We're going to go one position at a time. We're each going to give one quarterback, one running back. We might move on to 2 wide receivers, depending on how much time we have. Might hit up a tight end or 2. So let's start at quarterback. And Jody, we'll let you go first. Who's your quarterback that you're going to be avoiding, as there's a train in the background here?
I'm not necessarily avoiding Derek Carr, per se, but I just don't agree with his current ADP.
Yeah,
you're looking at Derek Carr. I mean, he is who he is. The last 2 years, his numbers have been remarkably consistent. He's at like 62% completions for about 3,950 yards, and he'll throw you about 29 touchdowns and get you. He had 6 interceptions last year. I believe he had 13 in 2015. He's been pretty consistent. I think he is who he is, and he's going, sometimes I'm seeing him going as a QB6, QB8, somewhere in that range, and I just don't agree with that. In his 3 years, he's finished as the quarterback 20, the quarterback 14, and the quarterback 16. And like I said, looking at the last 2 numbers, he is who he is. 3,950 yards, 29, 30 touchdowns. Hey, those are actually great numbers.
Bad in the red zone?
He has struggled in the red zone. Inside the 10 last year, 37.2% completion percentage. That was 40th among quarterbacks. The only starting quarterback that was less efficient inside the 10 was Kirk Cousins. Now, from a volume standpoint, Derek Carr, he's a fine fantasy quarterback. I'm not saying he's not. And, I always will lament the Texans organization for being so short-sighted and taking him off their draft board and not drafting him, because we sure could have used him here in Houston. But I just don't agree with the value. I think he's a fine fantasy starter if you wait till round 9, round 10, round 11 to get your guy, or he's a fine rotational guy. I just don't agree that he is QB6 and should be taken ahead of guys like Matt Ryan or Marcus Mariota or Kirk Cousins. Like, if we just hit on him, those are guys that I would rather have in my lineup. I just don't like the value of Derek Carr.
What do you think about that, Tags? Do you think, are you concerned about his health at all?
Not necessarily concerned about his health, but Derek Carr is one of the guys that I had on my list to avoid. And I agree with a lot of Jody's things, but one of the things that I would note is that Derek Carr last year, if you remove the one game he had against Tampa Bay where he scored like 36 fantasy points with no bonuses, his points per game was down around, I want to say it was the 17th quarterback in terms of points per game. So it really wasn't a great season as people say. His schedule is brutal this year. We've talked about this, about the AFC West and the schedule that they have to face this year. It's tough. They added Marshawn Lynch, who is, I mean, even at this stage in his career, he's probably better than Latavius Murray was. And, you noted Derek Carr struggles in the red zone. It's funny. I was talking to somebody about that, and it's just Derek Carr really, he's really good in his own end zone. And as he moves down the field, it's almost like he gets worse and worse as they get closer to the end zone. And it's something that people have overlooked. So I am totally in agreement with Jody here that Derek Carr is not going to be on any of my teams because he's being drafted as a top 10 quarterback. And in my initial set of projections, he popped up, Jody, I'm sure you the same, is he popped up, I think, as my QB 16, which is not something that you're really going to reach for.
Exact same thing for me, Tags. I actually I saw him down at QB 16, 17, and I had to readjust things thinking, okay, I'm off here. And I played with the numbers a little bit, and all it did was update him to QB 14. So that's about where where
guys. You guys I'm moving him down my draft board as you guys are talking about this because you're really selling me. I mean, I'm looking at it right now. His ECR, that's expert consensus ranking. So what all the experts come together to say, they have him at number 11. Okay, his ADP right now is QB number 8. That should tell you everything you need to know. The general public is too high in this guy.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and that's what Jody said. I think even being optimistic in bumping our numbers up because we almost feel bad about it gets him to that like maybe QB 13, QB 14 range, and that's never a good spot to be in. You never want to reach for a player like that. And at QB 8, it's an easy pass.
Yeah. I mean, the only wide receiver he has to throw to is Michael Crabtree.
Oh, stop it. Get out of here.
I intentionally left Amari Cooper out of my argument because of how much I know Tags likes him. But it's not that I'm trying to bash Carr. It's just that quarterback is so deep that you can get a really, really quality 30 touchdown potential quarterback as many as 16, 17, 18 deep. I mean, shoot, you could even really wait too long on quarterback and take someone like Ryan Tannehill. And if the rest of your lineup is pretty good, you can probably contend just fine. So, again,
well, that makes me want to puke. But I think your point is right on the money. But Ryan Tannehill, I would never dare do that.
Tyrod, just go Tyrod.
Yeah, just go Tyrod. He's ECR number 16, better. ADP number 19 quarterback. That's bizarre.
It's dumb.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Tags, who's your guy?
All right, so my guy is Cam Newton. I don't think this should come as any surprise to anyone. If you were to look at Cam Newton after he suffered his concussion last year, everybody remembers that game, and then the Panthers started talking about they wanted him to run less. The 11 games after suffering that concussion, Newton ran the ball just 61 times for 212 yards and 3 touchdowns. If you were to extrapolate that over a full 16-game season, it would give him 308 yards and 4 touchdowns. Do you know who that's awfully close to? Blake Bortles. Now, if we remain that same pace, even though they added Christian McCaffrey, even though they added Curtis Samuel, who's going to run some ball out of the backfield, even though they extended Jonathan Stewart, even if we say, you know what, we'll keep those same numbers for Cam Newton, let's talk about him as a passer. His average season is 3,629 yards with 23 passing touchdowns and 13 interceptions. Do you know who the closest comparison in 2016 that is to? Blake Bortles, who threw for just 20 less yards, the exact same amount of touchdowns, and 3 more interceptions.
And Bortles was injured too. That's not a good comparison.
That's what
You're
I'm
right
saying.
On the money though, Tags.
Yeah, the one year that people want to go back to is the year Cam Newton was an MVP and everything went right for Cam Newton. He's a guy that rides on confidence, and when you add the pieces they did, they really do want to change the offense. It's going to take time for Newton to change the way he plays the game, and if they do tone it down and don't want him throwing down the field very much, if they say that Devin Funchess isn't Ted Ginn and we don't want him doing that, I really am having a hard time figuring out why Cam Newton is a starting quarterback in the league if they're going to take away his rushing and take away the thing he does best is throw the ball deep. So for me, Cam Newton is a big time avoid, even though the ECR on him is at 7.
How do you feel about Cam Newton, Jody? Are you interested whatsoever?
Not really. Not in the top 10. Again, people are overpaying for that great 2015 season where he threw just 35 touchdowns, which is crazy because Tag just did a great job saying what his career averages are. He's pretty much a 3,600 yard guy that throws about 23 touchdowns. Very good as a runner, but like Tags pointed out, you're talking about an entire new backfield of options to potentially take Newton away from all that rushing production and especially all the running touchdowns because they know Carolina's not going anywhere if Cam Newton gets hurt again, as we saw. So they're going to want to keep him healthy. So I'm guessing he's going to start running the ball a little bit less. I'm a little skeptical overall of Carolina's coaching staff's ability to actually make production out of all these new pieces they have. You're talking about a team that never incorporated their running backs into the passing game. I mean, what did Jonathan Stewart have last year? Like 6 or 8 receptions? Just a crazy low number. I just don't expect. I mean, it may be a challenge for them at first to incorporate a Christian McCaffrey and Curtis Samuel and all the other new little toys they have. So I don't think Cam should be anywhere near the top 10 in fantasy quarterbacks. It's the same argument to me with Derek Carr. Good professional quarterbacks, but fantasy quarterback is so deep. There's just no point in reaching for these guys. If you're going to miss the boat on, say, one of the top 3 or 4 quarterbacks, you might as well just sit back and wait until round 9 or 10 and take a guy like Phillip Rivers, Eli Manning if you have to. If you wait really long to get these kind of guys, I would rather do that than to take some of these middle-of-the-road guys.
Yeah, I'm looking at our QB cheat sheet page right now, and we've got a tier system. Cam Newton is at the top of tier 3 based on what the experts are saying. I'm looking at the tier. I would rather have every single person, Jameis Winston, Derek Carr, Dak Prescott, Phillip Rivers, Tyrod Taylor, than Cam Newton. I've got him all the way down at 15, and I'm thinking about moving Carson Palmer up ahead of him.
Carson Palmer, vastly overlooked. He's a guy I've been grabbing so much because what's his average? What's his ADP? He's down at like QB 18 or 20, somewhere in that range.
21, yeah.
Even in a, quote, down year last year, he was QB 14, and he was really good down the stretch. I think in the final 5 weeks of the regular season, he put up something like 11 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. He was actually pretty good. And Arizona.
And he did it without an offensive line. He did it without John Brown. Yeah,
without
Carson
Michael
Palmer,
Floyd.
People forget he was a top 4 quarterback 2 years ago.
Perfect. John Brown pretty much missed a year, so they had a kind of a ragtag group of receivers once they departed from Michael Floyd, so it was a challenge for them where he had to force feed Larry Fitzgerald. I like Carson Palmer.
So guys, my quarterback, well, I'll get there. I was going to say Cam Newton, but I knew Tags was going to say him. We talk about him a lot. I mean, we're both really low on Cam Newton. I'm also really low on Matt Ryan. I think most people are. He's being drafted as the number 4 QB. Experts have him at number 6. But, I mean, that TD rate doubled last year. He lost Kyle Shanahan. There's no way he's going to sustain that. I think he drops down to 6 or 7. There's no way I'd draft him as QB number 4 ahead of Andrew Luck. But I'm also a little weary about Andrew Luck. I mean, he's still not throwing. Does that concern you guys?
A little bit. I've been all over Luck saying that he would have been he was teetering for me with Tom Brady as the number 2 quarterback because I loved the addition of Kamar Aiken, giving them the little possession style receiver, maybe allowing Dante Moncrief to do more than he's been doing. Dante Moncrief getting healthy, T.Y. Hilton in the prime of his career, Jack Doyle proving worthy, Eric Swoop even getting some snaps, Marlon Mack adding a different dimension to the offense. There was reasons to love Luck, and there still is. I think that maybe we might be going overboard because with Luck, I really don't think they need to rush getting him back on the field. I think they've learned their lesson there. If he's not throwing by the start of the preseason, that's an issue. But I think once he gets back on the field, I think it's going to be all systems go, and I think Luck will be just fine.
Would you still draft him number 4?
Yes, 100%. I would take him. I mean, I would still take him. I think Breeze would be over him, so I think I'd take him at number 4. Him and Russell Wilson are close in that tier, but if he starts throwing fine and everything is coming back as like positive reports, I'm going to move Luck above Breeze, and he's right in that tier with Brady for me.
Yeah, I've got Rodgers, and then I had Luck, Breeze, and Brady, but now Luck's dropped down to number 4, and I don't really know what I think about it. I mean, I drafted him in the first round of our 2QB Experts League, and it's looking scary right now. It was kind of a dangerous thing to do with his shoulder the way it is.
I think he'll be fine. I actually agree exactly with what Tag said. For me right now, Andrew Luck's kind of in a tier by himself at number 4. If the time training camp opens and he starts to look healthy and he's throwing the ball, he can move, like Tag said, right? He can move up there ahead of Breeze. I feel pretty happy with Tom Brady is my number 2 at this point. But with Luck, there's really nothing good that can come from a guy like that playing in OTAs and all that kind of stuff, because only injuries can happen. So, it's not anything to get too alarmed by. But like I said, we'll find out here in a few weeks when the real training camp hits, and when he starts throwing and all that, he looks good, then we can consider moving him up. But after that, if he's limited or there's some issues, then it might be time to hit the panic button then.
So guys, my quarterback that I'm avoiding, there's no way I'm touching him, is Russell Wilson. They did nothing to fix their offensive line and nothing to give him more passing weapons. I mean, we're talking about Paul Richardson maybe being his number 2. Doug
Which
Baldwin's
would be a massive
right.
upgrade though on Jermaine Kearse, to be fair.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know, man. I really don't know. I mean, I know Paul Richardson has some skills, but we've never seen him do it. Russell Wilson hardly ran the ball after his injury last season. I don't expect that to resume this season. He had 259 yards, 1 touchdown. He's 28 years old. I don't think he gets his legs back under him. And if he doesn't have his legs going, that's not a top 5 quarterback. I don't know if it's a top 8 or 9 quarterback.
Where are you at on him, Jody?
Well, his rushing production, needs to be taken into account. I know it was down last year because he was hurt. I think that'll bounce back a little bit, but he's been a pretty limited passer. He, like Derek Carr, has kind of struggled in the short yardage, and this is not an explosive Seattle offense by any stretch, unless their expectation is to actually let Eddie Lacy spend some time at tight end or tackle. The offensive line is going to continue to be, a problem for Seattle, but I feel okay with Russell Wilson, maybe as high as QB6, somewhere in that range. But, again, he's someone that people are still paying kind of like Cam Newton. We're still paying for 2015 with Cam Newton. We're remembering how great Russell Wilson was for the last 2 or 3 years. But there's some numbers that kind of declined last year. He only threw 21 touchdowns, and this was him basically trying to be a pocket passer as opposed to the scrambler first. And it didn't work out too great. And again, they may have upgraded their third receiver, like Mike said, but overall, it's still a below average offense for sure.
Yeah, they've got one of the worst. They're probably the worst offensive line in football. Doug Baldwin is their only weapon. I guess Jimmy Graham's all right, but I don't think it's looking too pretty. I'd take Kirk Cousins above him. Kirk Cousins right now is ADP number 11 for quarterbacks. ECR is number 7, so right there behind Russell Wilson. And I'd prefer Cousins.
I don't know how we're overlooking Russell Wilson's previous few seasons. Like Cam Newton's a different case because Cam Newton has had one good passing year and everything else was relied on rushing, whereas Russell Wilson, He scored 1 rushing touchdown in 2015. Granted, he had over 500 yards rushing, but he's the type of quarterback when you watch him play, he doesn't take big hits. He doesn't put himself in a position that, that Colin Kaepernick did or that Cam Newton did. He just doesn't do that, and that's why he's really withheld. Like, he hasn't really missed games throughout his career. 2016 was the first time he's seen adversity due to these injuries. You saw him walking around with his legs essentially duct taped together for the first half of the season. I went through and looked at it over the final 8 games of the year, even with the bad weapons that he had, even with the horrific offensive line it's still bad. It's still bad. Signing Luke Jokel, it's not going to necessarily fix those issues. It's going to maybe improve left tackle a little bit. But for me, we're overlooking a guy that finished as the QB3 the 2 previous seasons. Like, he never threw more than 10 interceptions in his first 4 seasons. Russell Wilson is a phenomenal passer. That's why even if his rushing totals take a little bit of a dip, I'm okay with it because he was due for some positive touchdown regression in terms of rushing touchdowns anyway. For me, Paul Richardson would be an upgrade over Jermaine Kearse. If Tyler Lockett, I don't have high hopes for it, but if he can somehow make it back from his injury and be even 80% of the player that he was supposed to be, we'd have hopes there. Amara Darboh was drafted. Paul Richardson did flash a little bit at the end of last season when he needed to. So for me, Russell Wilson is definitely not someone I'm avoiding. In fact, I actually bought him in a few dynasty leagues recently because the perception on him is that he's toast and that he's not as good as we thought he was. In reality, I think he's kind of like a Dak Prescott type quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, Dak Prescott's pretty good, but what is he, like quarterback number 12 for most people?
Well, it's just because he has 1 year of experience. We can't fully say that Dak Prescott, but in Dynasty, like we talked about it on one show, I think, Bobby, that we talked about Dak Prescott being a top 5 Dynasty quarterback. And I think
agree.
Russell Wilson,
Yeah.
I think Russell Wilson is a top 3, top 4 Dynasty quarterback. So I'm not backing off on my love for him because he's actually a good quarterback.
Okay. That's fair. I mean, I still disagree because I think their offensive line is so much worse than it was 2 years ago. But...
Oh, God. It could be the new Chargers and Phillip Rivers. It's sad.
All right, guys, let's move on over to running back. Jody, who's your running back that you think is just being drafted way too high and you don't want a part of him?
Well, as of right now, I don't really want any part of Spencer Ware in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, wherever he's going. I'm a little skeptical last year when he was actually given the golden opportunity to be the featured guy for Seattle. He only had one game in which Andy Reid actually gave him more than 20 carries. Kind of padded his stats with 33 catches, and he had 42 targets. But when you're bringing in a 3rd rounder in Kareem Hunt, and you got Charkandrick West still there, it's quite possible for me that he's not going to see as many targets in the passing game, which is really going to affect his overall PPR numbers. And Kareem Hunt, that's a guy that is going to probably get pretty involved. But Spencer Ware is the bigger back. You know, he's somebody you would think that would be a short yardage, but kind of struggle in that area. 5 of his 9 carries last year inside the 10-yard line went for 0 yards or loss.
Wow.
So when you get down there on the goal line, he wasn't very effective at getting you the touchdowns. From the 1-yard line, he went 0 for 3. He had 3 attempts from the 1-yard line, didn't come punch in any of them, ended up with a grand total of -2 yards. So I'm kind of having a little trouble coming up with how Spencer Ware is going to pay off an investment in the 4th or 5th or the 3rd round from fantasy standpoint. Because to me, it looks like when you bring in Kareem Hunt and you've got West already there, this looks like it's going to turn into a committee situation. And I'm not sure that Spencer Ware is the better back really in any facets of the game for Kansas City.
What do you think about that, Tags?
I'm a Spencer Ware fan, so I would disagree. Yeah. I mean, the reason I think people, there is concern about Kareem Hunt. They drafted a running back. I get that. And there is concern for that. Now, the reason I think that people still
draft Spencer, I think it's a just in
Ware,
case.
Well, I agree. I think he could be more of a replacement for Charkandrick West. If you look at Spencer Ware last year, people talk about his struggles, but a lot of his struggles really came after he was concussed. In that game against the Colts, he was concussed and he never came back the same player. And to hear some players come out and talk about the fact that, you know, when you get a concussion, you try and come back so fast, you can go through the motions, but you're a little bit off. And if that's the case with Spencer Ware, we have nothing else that says otherwise because he was productive before that concussion. He was productive in 2015 when he got an opportunity. So Andy Reid, one way or another, Spencer Ware, Kareem Hunt is going to be a fantastic fantasy pick. I can't say which one. I think we're going to learn this really fast in training camp because Andy Reid he's a veteran. He's a no nonsense guy. He does go with a 1 running back system, and he's been one of the coaches that believes in that. So I think that we're going to find out. And once we do find out, I think one of 2 things is going to happen. Spencer Ware is going to move up into that RB 15 range, right near McCaffrey and Carlos Hyde, or he's going to move back down to that, you know, LeGarrette Blount range, that 27, 28, 29 running back range. So I think I just believe in Spencer Ware a little bit more than Jody does. I think that's where the differ comes from.
I like where Ware's being drafted right now at number 19. That's also where his ECR is. I am concerned about the concussions returning and him losing his job to Hunt. But if he's playing well and we know that he's the starter, I see no reason why I wouldn't take him at 13 ahead of Crowell, Marshawn Lynch, Carlos Hyde, Christian McCaffrey. I mean, if we know what we're getting, a starting running back in Andy Reid's offense, yeah, sign me up. I'll take him a lot earlier than he's going right now.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. It's just I want to know who's the starter, and if Andy Reid confirms Spencer Ware's the starter, Kareem Hunt's got a way to go. He's got to learn the playbook, this and that. If that's the case and that's what happens, then Spencer Ware should be drafted as a high-end RB2 with RB1 upside.
Yeah, and if he's not, you know, if we don't know what's going on with Spencer Ware, he might drop down to 25, 26 for me. I'd take Mike Gillislee and Doug Martin ahead of him for sure if we don't know what's going on.
Yeah, it can go either way. So I definitely understand where Jody's coming from in this because there is some uncertainty. And when you draft a running back, you know, semi-high, as they did with Kareem Hunt, there's definite concerns. And I would argue that both of them are decent values at where they're being drafted.
So, guys, Joey Chestnut, as we're recording this, they're doing the hot dog eating contest.
Oh, God.
And Joey Chestnut just ate 72 hot dogs in one sitting. So here's my question. If all the running backs got into a hot dog eating contest, and let's just say they don't let Eddie Lacy into it because they know he's going to win, who would win besides Eddie Lacy?
Marshawn Lynch.
You think Marshawn would? I don't know, man. He has a sweet tooth.
Did you see that video of him on the soccer field?
No, I haven't seen it.
Okay.
What did he do?
It came out yesterday on Twitter, and he ran onto a soccer field. They were playing an actual soccer game, like a Major League Soccer game, and Lynch was there, and they had him run onto the field, and man, I will tell you, if you're concerned about Eddie Lacy, you need to take a look at Marshawn Lynch and say, should I be worried about Lynch? Because he looks big. Like he's always been a big guy, but he looks big.
Oh, that's scary.
Check it out after the show.
Jody, who do you think's winning this hot dog contest?
Latavius Murray could probably do some damage with hot dogs, considering how slow he is. He must be putting away a few of them.
Rob Kelly.
That's pretty good. I think Fat Rob, whatever they call him, I think David Johnson would probably win just because he's a beast, man. He would win whatever he wants to win.
That's funny. He cares too much about his body to put hot dogs in it.
Yeah, you're right. He'd probably skip out
I don't
on that
think I've had 72 hot dogs my entire life.
Yeah, that's a ton of hot dogs, guys.
That's out of control.
All right, Dags, who's the running back you're avoiding?
All right, so there's a few, and it depends on really what range you go in. But for me, in like a general sense, looking at...
You're going to pick my guy, and I'm going to have to pick someone else. I know it. I'm just waiting.
No, I'm not, because I know that you like this guy, Rob Kelly. So Rob
Don't
Kelly...
say that.
Don't say that. His ADP varies on different sites. Like it can range anywhere from like 22 to 35. So it's really a split opinion on Rob Kelly, but he's someone that I will not own on any of my fantasy teams. Like I'm pretty sure he would have to drop down to like the RB 45 for me to even consider him.
Oh.
I don't like him very much as a running back, and I understand all the people that say, man, he looks so crazy out there, he breaks tackles and this and that. He's also a guy that looks to break tackles. Like he's the guy that runs into contact because he's not very elusive, so of course he's going to do that. He's not very good. He's a 2-down back in today's NFL. You have to be pretty special to be on the field as a 2-down back, like Leonard Fournette. But Rob Kelly, there's rumor has it that Samaje Perine has already come in, and we hear fluff on players all the time, but what they're saying about him is that they're like, he's picking up the playbook very, very fast, and he's staying extra time after practice. And on top of that, they say we came in expecting a decent receiver. They said that he's excellent out of the backfield with his hands, which is something that Rob Kelly struggled with last year. So for me, Rob Kelly is, right now it's showing his ADP 22 on our site, that just sounds crazy.
And Perine's 43, 20 picks later.
That's dumb. That's just dumb. And
it's dumb.
Yeah, it may take a couple weeks because they may give him the rookie treatment where they're not going to give him the starting job right out of the gate. But Samaje Perine's a better player than Rob Kelly, and I stand by that.
Yeah, I remember when Robert Kelly, they were talking about how he might get some carries. I remember last preseason saying, this guy does not belong on an NFL roster. If you watched him during the preseason, he was just a garbage quarterback. Yeah, he did end up breaking a bunch of tackles, and I think he proved me wrong. I've kind of come full circle on Kelly. I was excited about him, and then I was like, oh, man, Perine's getting the job. I blew it picking Robert Kelly. But you know what? From what I'm hearing right now and all the experts, they're pretty high on Robert Kelly still. And, I think I'm going to side with them.
That's cool. So, Jody, be the tiebreaker here. Rob Kelly or Samaje Perine? At their values.
No, it sounds like their ADP.
Oh, at their values, Perine, yeah.
Oh, yeah, they're totally reversed. Yeah, Rob Kelly, in the middle of last year, he had those 3 stretches where he got 20-plus carries and looked good, but he never got that again, even though he looked good at that point. And 4 of his final 6 games, he was actually under 4 yards a carry. Only had a couple of touchdowns in the second half of the season. So overall, there's just a lot of improvement. Washington overall has a pretty good offense, and I think Perine's probably going to maybe not start the season, but eventually he's going to start to take over. So I agree that Rob Kelly's not someone I'm really going out of my way to find.
I think Kelly's going to get quite a few touches the first few weeks. Then you've got a selling piece. I would draft him over Perine, but not by much right now. I mean, with that being said, Jacquizz Rodgers had a really good stretch of 3 games, too. Is anyone talking about drafting him in the top 25?
No, even though you'll probably get more starts.
Close. Where is he, like 60?
You'll probably get more starts out of Jacquizz Rodgers than you will out of Rob Kelly.
I don't know. I actually like Charles Sims over Jacquizz Rodgers, but That's a conversation for another day. Charles Sims was really good in 2015.
Yeah, he was. He's been an up and down. Like his rookie year, he was awful. Then he was really like one of the most efficient running backs the next year. And then last year he was awful. But last year he was hurt, so maybe he never bounced back from his injury.
And his rookie year, he was coming back from injury. The only time we've seen him healthy, Charles Sims was dominant. He had 1,100 yards in like just a few touches.
So let's hear it, Bobby. Who is your player to avoid? What running back?
Oh, well, I mean, I thought for sure you were going to pick Isaiah Crowell. That's my guy. I mean, everybody knows that I'm not drafting Isaiah Crowell. His ADP right now is number 16. And please explain this to me. I'm sorry, Jody, if you like him. But please explain to me why the experts are higher than 16 on Isaiah Crowell in a terrible offense. I know they've got a nice offensive line, but he's not a better running back than Duke Johnson. I do not believe that. He had 3 great carries, 16 carries that helped him out quite a bit. Besides that, he was nothing. He was absolutely nothing. He was no better than Frank Gore besides that.
Jody, do you want to answer this? Do you want me to answer this one?
I'll weigh in real quick here. I like Crowell, but unfortunately the value's gone with him. People are expecting much bigger things from him, and they're expecting Cleveland obviously to be better, hard to get better from last season. And he was RB 14 last year, and this is with under 200 carries. I think there's a lot to like about Isaiah Crowell, but this is more of an indictment of how shallow the running backs are in fantasy football, because once you get past the second round and you contemplate Marshawn Lynch as the next running back that you want to take, after that it falls apart really quickly. So Bobby, if you don't like Crowell, you might as well wait a while before you even think about taking another running back. I think he is quite a bit better than Duke Johnson, to be honest with you. And to put up 4.8 yards a carry in that garbage Cleveland offense says a lot about him. I just don't know if he's going to be able to pay off what his value is, because he's somebody that it's like the rest of the world is caught up with the us analysts and experts here and is actually quite aware of him, because he's, at running back 12, 13, 14, almost everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, I'd rather draft Joe Mixon, C.J. Anderson, even Eddie Lacy than Crowell.
All right, so I'm going to weigh in on this Crowell debate, and here's the thing, Bobby. I've talked with you before, is that I'm not a huge believer in Crowell's talent either. I think he was an undrafted free agent for a reason, but here's the thing. Cleveland and Hugh Jackson like him. They tendered him at his second round level, which means they've really cared enough to put that on him, whereas the Bills just let Mike Gillislee go. So the Browns, regardless of our feeling on his talent, they like him. He finished as the number 14 running back this last year. They added, all right, so they already had Joe Thomas at left tackle. They already had Joel Bitonio at guard. They added Kevin Zeitler. They added J.C. Tretter, 2 of the top free agent signings on the offensive line, which is why the Cleveland Browns in my offensive line rankings are number 2. I was actually tempted to put him at number 1, but gave that nod to the Raiders. So he's playing behind the best offensive line in football on a team that is improved defensively. Looking at Hugh Jackson, his teams before last year had always ranked, it was like 4 years running, they ranked top 8 in attempts, top 6 in rushing touchdowns. They want to run the ball with him. He was involved in the passing game as everything went down the stretch. So for me, with Isaiah Crowell, there are plenty of reasons to like him. Now, again, the talent holds him back from being an RB1. He technically should be an RB1 with all these things going in his favor, and he very well might surprise me and be better as a talent than I thought. I don't think Duke Johnson's going to go away, but for me, I think Isaiah Crowell, Jody mentioned it, I think that the expert crowd has taken all value away from him, where he's moved up to the point where you're getting him where kind of he should finish. I just don't think there's more upside than that, because the offense, I've talked about this with Jordan Howard. I talked about it with Carlos Hyde. If you are not a top 14 scoring offense, the top 8 running backs last year, okay, in all of fantasy football, top 8 running backs in terms of points per game were on top 14 scoring offenses. So therefore, Isaiah Crowell doesn't have top 8 upside. It's just not going to happen. So he's being drafted where he should finish, and that's the rough part. But he is a great, great guy to have on your team as an RB2.
You don't think Kenny Britt's going to help them be a top 8 offense?
I don't think Kenny Britt is. I think Kenny Britt's being overdrafted, to be honest with you. I'm not a huge Kenny Britt guy.
Okay, so guys, I was looking at this sheet, and I see Adrian Peterson right now at number 31 ECR, which I think is all right. I mean, yeah, he's got some potential, but Mark Ingram's there. Mark Ingram's a good running back, right? But his ADP is all the way up at 23. I'm not touching him for that. In fact, probably more than Crowell. If Crowell dropped to 17, I'd take him. If Adrian Peterson dropped to 28, still probably wouldn't take him.
Really? Wow. My take on Peterson, it's funny. My brother hosted his 4th of July barbecue yesterday, and I went over there. We started talking some football, and he asked me about Peterson, my thoughts on him. And, he's a guy that I said he's probably going to be a better version of Tim Hightower. So Tim Hightower last year was a solid flex player, whereas Adrian Peterson is a high-end RB3 or a low-end RB2. I'm not going to be opposed to it, especially considering the loss that the Saints just had on their offensive line. Their left tackle just went down. He's going to be out for the season, so they're going to be running behind their guards. Traditionally, the Saints have yielded like the most fantasy points to their running back position, so it's going to be a timeshare, but Adrian Peterson has been one of the best goal line backs in football for an awfully long time. And as we saw last year, the Saints just don't trust Mark Ingram around the goal line. So Adrian Peterson, I think you could do worse than him as you're like a low-end RB2, high-end 3.
Jody, what are your thoughts on Adrian Peterson? How high would you be willing to take him? Not 23, right?
No, but to me, he gets up into the upper 20s. I'm interested. It sounds like they're really impressed with the shape he's in. And Mike pointed out the potency of New Orleans offense. There could be quite a few scoring opportunities for him. And what no one's talking about is, for me, is the potential of Peterson for take more of a first and second down role, and for Mark Ingram to slide into that third down back. When we're all assuming that Alvin Kamara is going to be like the receiving back that Reggie Bush and Darren Sproles have made popular there. But Mark Ingram is a very underrated pass catcher. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see Peterson actually take a more than the lion's share of first and second down carries. Obviously, he's got to remain effective, and the offensive line, there's some issues there. But I think Mark Ingram could be just fine as a two-headed monster and someone that takes more of the third down work. So I think Peterson is really, really interesting there as a potential RB3, into the 20s. I think there's some upside there.
You guys kind of changed my mind here. I feel like I gave bad advice just 3 minutes ago by saying I want to take Peterson at 28, because you guys have changed my mind that quickly. Sorry, everyone.
That was the best, Bobby. I love you, dude.
I did that last year with Dorial Green Beckham. I was talking to, I don't remember who it was. I don't want to put anyone's name behind this, but they talked me into Dorial Green Beckham last year with just one stat. He was number 1 in the league in jump balls, and it wasn't even close. And I went full circle. I was trashing him, and then I was like, oh man, I believe in Dorial Green Beckham. All of a sudden, I was wrong. So I don't know what that says about Adrian Peterson, but sometimes that happens. That's why we have these conversations this early.
For sure, man. For sure. You always have to be willing to adjust on the information you hear. It doesn't mean you always have to change or agree with everything you hear, but when people throw out things that make sense, listen to it.
Yeah, unless they say something that makes sense with Hunter Henry being bad, then you just completely ignore them.
Obviously, and like Kevin White being the GOAT.
Yeah, you definitely agree with that because that's accurate. But anyway, let's move on and talk about wide receivers. Tags, let's get you started here. Who's the wide receiver that you'll be avoiding?
Man, there's quite a few of them on my list. Let's
hear a few names here. We'll debate one or two.
All right, so some names I put down: Julian Edelman at his cost. I won't own any of him. I won't own any Alshon Jeffrey. I won't own probably any Kelvin Benjamin, but the name I was probably going to use would have been Jarvis Landry. I can't see I can't see owning any of him in 2017 because he's being drafted as the number 16 wide receiver right now, and so here's the issue: from week 10
behind Sammy Watkins. Whoa.
It's dumb. Jarvis Landry doesn't belong in that conversation to me anymore. So in PPR leagues, it gives him a little higher floor. Yeah, sure. But this is a guy from week 10 in 2014 through week 4 of 2016. So we're talking about a year and a half. He averaged 10.11 targets per game. All right. Over the final 12 games of 2016 with Adam Gase, once Adam Gase kind of learned his offense and the players that he had, Landry averaged just 7.16 targets per game. In that time, he averaged 7.8 fantasy points. Do you know what 7.8 fantasy points would have been, points per game would have been in 2016? The number 40 wide receiver. So when you see someone like Jarvis Landry take a hit in terms of volume, it's really going to affect him. And on top of that, this is a team that went out and they spent a lot of money to keep Kenny Stills. He was the top paid free agent wide receiver. All right. And then now Jarvis Landry is supposed to be a free agent at the end of the season. They have not even discussed a contract extension. He is gone. I think that's the reason that they're trying to work with Devontae Parker. They're happy that he turned things around. I think they're trying to talk him up. They brought in Julius Thomas to take targets over the middle of the field. I think they are planning for life without Jarvis Landry. And honestly, it may be the smartest thing. I don't know, because Jarvis Landry is a player. It's like you don't know his value because of the way he's used in the offense. But at the same time, if his targets go down, his production goes down. And if that happens, why is he being drafted as the number 16 wide receiver?
You know, he's being drafted at 16. Stephon Diggs is being drafted at 33.
Stupid.
You'd rather have Diggs, right?
I actually think I would rather have Stephon Diggs on my team, yes.
Jody, would you rather have Stephon Diggs than Jarvis Landry?
It's pretty close. With Diggs, you actually have the perception that there's some upside, that he's progressing in the right way. And Tags just pointed out how Jarvis Landry kind of faded last year. But I was going to kind of mess with Taglier and tell him that Jarvis Landry is actually Amari Cooper if he was good.
Get out of here. I'm going to log off right now. You guys are fired. I am just going to log off, or I'm going to kick you guys out. One way or the other, this is not going on any further.
Oh, man. I laugh so hard that I'm cramping up.
Jarvis Landry's actually outscored Amari Cooper the last 2 years. Now, obviously, like I said, I was just kind of in jest because, you know, we talked about Stephon Diggs having upside. Obviously, Amari Cooper has a massive upside. You just got to learn to figure out what is going on in the red zone for the Raiders offense before Amari Cooper can jump up to that next level. I don't really have a problem with Jarvis Landry where his value is in PPR. Obviously, in standard, he drops off pretty significantly. It's a lot of it's a lot of hollow stats, though. It's a lot of targets and short little reception where he typically is a guy that's going to catch the ball for 9, 10, 11 yards and very low touchdown numbers. But if, like Mike said, his targets decreased from 167 to 131 last year. If that trend continues, then it's going to be really hard for him to be anything more than a PPR wide receiver 3.
Yeah. All right, Jody, so who are your names? Who do you want to avoid this season at their ADP?
Well, a couple of Devontae Adams to me stands out as a guy that I'm kind of trying to avoid because I just can't see him replicating the 12 touchdowns again with Randall Cobb, assuming he's healthy, and with Martellus Bennett there in Green Bay. Devontae Adams is someone I'm kind of trying to avoid. But the number one wide receiver that you would look at kind of early in a draft that I'm avoiding is Keenan Allen. I just don't get it with this. Everyone is still paying 2014, 2015 prices for this guy based simply on a couple of glimmers of fantastic production he's done. But overall, he's missed, 23 games in the last 2 years. He's still less than a year removed from a torn ACL. He's got a lengthy injury history. And then San Diego's offense, you got so many options there. Mike Williams, Tyrell Williams really emerged last year as a wide receiver 18 and went over 1,000 yards. Antonio Gates is there. Hunter Henry. Melvin Gordon's going to play a big role in the passing game. And Keenan Allen, he's just not a guy to me that's going to take that next step and get you a whole bunch of touchdowns in the end zone. I know I've talked about red zone a lot because that's one of the things that I look at a lot. Keenan Allen has not caught a pass since the 2014 season inside the 10-yard line. He's just not someone who, to me, I don't know, I just don't get it, the interest in it. Everyone's still paying for the great numbers that he put up. And since that time, all he's done is pretty much get hurt. And I just don't understand how you're taking him in the third round ahead of guys like Allen Robinson, Demaryius Thomas, Sammy Watkins. I mean, if you want to go upside, Tyreek Hill, all these kind of guys are going kind of behind Keenan Allen, and I don't get it.
High five through the podcast, Jody. You've redeemed yourself for the Amari Cooper comment that you made. So you're back in my good graces.
Awesome.
The Amari Cooper comment was so good that I will let this one slide, but I'll let it be known that I do disagree. Keenan Allen is still just 25 years old. I do agree that they've got a lot of weapons, but I think, you look at what he's done throughout his career, and he's always just got so many targets, no matter who else they had on the field. I think Melvin Gordon takes a step back because Keenan Allen is here. I think their offense will be built around Keenan Allen because he's just that type of talent.
I think that's why they drafted Mike Williams, because they're worried about Keenan Allen being not being the guy that they thought. And he is, like Jody said, he has never finished better than the number 17 wide receiver. He's never fully put it together. And the year that everybody wants to talk about is the year he was on pace for like 190 targets. When he got hurt at that point, Phillip Rivers was on pace for 700 plus pass attempts. That was the only year where Phillip Rivers has thrown the ball more than 582 times. So that's like a massive, massive decrease. So if you're looking at actual target share, it wasn't out of control. So Keenan Allen, like like I said, if he falls into that low end wide receiver 2 conversation, I'm okay with him there. Like, but for people expecting even something close to wide receiver 1 production, I think they are sorely mistaken.
I don't know, man. He was on pace for 1,450 yards
like
just 2 years ago as a 23-year-old.
I mean, DeAndre Hopkins put together a season like that with 192 targets, and we all know how that ended up.
Yeah, well, I mean, his quarterback is substantially different than Phillip Rivers.
But there's also no other weapons, whereas like the Chargers have tons of other players they can go to now. Like, he's returning to a team that is completely different than the last one that he played on.
Yeah, I'm not saying that I would draft him above DeAndre Hopkins, but I mean, right now he's going at number 20. I'd take him at 17 or 18. I'd take him over Brandon Cooks. I'd take him over Devontae Adams, Michael Crabtree. He's at the end of tier 3, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'd take him over Landry. That's fair. I mean, I think Keenan Allen, I didn't realize he'd fallen that far in the ranks because he was, when I wrote my article on him, I think he was number 14, and it was kind of like, no.
It's probably because of you bad-mouthing him, man. That's why he's fallen so much. You're just giving me a discount for him.
I hope people are listening, man.
Yeah, nobody cares what I say about Amari Cooper. He's still being drafted at number 10, but...
Because he's the GOAT.
You know, that's right. Yeah, okay. Guys, the wide receivers that I'm low on, a lot of the guys tags mentioned, actually. Julian Edelman, Tyreek Hill, he didn't mention, but I'm not touching him at that price. Yeah, he's got some upside, but he's a gimmick receiver. I mean, he's kind of like Percy Harvin. And I was never going to draft Percy Harvin that high. I mean, Tyreek Hill, with how small he is, he's just got the kind of body I'm not sure it's going to hold up. But for me, it's Alshon Jeffrey. I mean, I think people forget that his soft tissue is made out of paper. He is never going to be healthy. I would be willing to bet Keenan Allen plays more games this year than Alshon Jeffrey. And, I'm going to pass before he just wastes a bench spot on my team for another 10 weeks.
Yeah, I'm not. As I mentioned before, I'm not buying Alshon Jeffrey. Like a quick tidbit that I wrote my Studs to Duds article, and I would argue that Alshon Jeffrey shouldn't even be considered a stud anymore because he hasn't really done much when even on the field. I mean, Cameron Meredith was outproducing him last year. But if you look at the Eagles, their receiving core under Doug Peterson last year saw just a 48% target share. That was the lowest in the NFL. They also caught just 7 touchdowns, which is the lowest in the NFL. Now, I understand when you have, Jordan Matthews as your number 1 receiver, Dorial Green-Beckham, Nelson Aguilar, you're not going to see massive numbers, but it comes down to offensive philosophy. And I know that Jody does projections as well. And when you do projections, you look at things that go on in the past with coaching staffs, you look at quarterbacks, and what we have to go off with Carson Wentz, what we have to go off with Doug Peterson, it's not good. Do you remember the last time that a team did not have a single wide receiver touchdown? Yeah, that was the 2014 Kansas City Chiefs when Doug Peterson was their offensive coordinator. His offenses have ranked 27th, 26th, and 28th in passing touchdowns over the last 3 years. So Alshon Jeffrey has never been a big yardage guy. He was a touchdown guy in his heyday, and those are just not going to come very frequently. So with you 100%, I cannot believe his ADP is sitting at 29 overall. That's just crazy.
Yep, those are great stats, Mike. And again, to me, Jeffrey's right there in that same group of guys as Keenan Allen, guys that are going to be either normally taken in the 3rd round, maybe the top of the 4th, that I have no interest in, that I just let somebody else take. And I probably haven't taken either of those gentlemen in any drafts I've done yet.
Hey guys, we've got a little bit more time, so we're going to move over to tight ends, but it's going to be a lightning round. You get the final word. No one gets to disagree with you, okay? So Jody, you go first. What's your final word on a tight end that you'll be avoiding?
Well, I want to pick on Eric Ebron, which I normally do, but I'm going to actually go a little deeper and go with C.J. Fedorowicz here in Houston. I think a lot of people are wanting to wait on tight ends and take a guy that they can get later and think he's going to be good. But Houston's tight end share was ridiculous last year simply because of their terrible quarterback situation. In 2014, under Bill O'Brien, tight ends only had a 10.6% target share. In 2015, it was a 12.7% target share. Last year, it jumped up to 30.5%, which is a ridiculously high number. Those numbers are going to go down. C.J. Fedorowicz is a guy that should probably not even be drafted in most leagues. And again, the Texans also re-signed Ryan Griffin, so they're going to still trot out a 2 tight end rotation. So if you're looking late at tight ends or think you're going to get pretty decent production from Fedorowicz late, I'd look elsewhere.
Jody is such a smart man. Like, I know this is the lightning round, but he's a Houston guy. Guys, trust me on this one. I love everything he just said, and it makes all the sense in the world. I don't like Fedorowicz either. Mine would be O.J. Howard. Everybody wants to trust it. Yeah, everybody wants to trust a rookie tight end, and he's walking into an offense that has Mike Evans, Deshaun Jackson, Chris Godwin has reportedly looked really good. Adam Humphries is playing the slot, and then out of the backfield you have guys that can catch the ball like Doug Martin, Charles Sims, even Jaquiz Rogers, and Cameron Brate is a guy they said that we are not forgetting about. So don't be shocked if OJ Howard is only playing about half the snaps. And rookie tight ends historically don't produce very well, and Evan Silva, previous guest on our show, I think he bet like $500 that OJ Howard would not exceed, I think it was like 600 or 700 yards this season.
I like both those picks a lot. My guy, however, is Delanie Walker. Right now he's being drafted as this number 6 tight end, and I get it. He was really good last season and especially the year before, but so much of that was touchdown rate, and I don't think that's sustainable, especially considering they just added Eric Decker, Corey Davis. Delanie Walker's getting really old, and I just don't think he's going to perform like a top 6 tight end this year. In fact, I don't know if he'll be a top 12 tight end. Right now I've got him ranked number 11, but it's really close between that 8 and 13 category. So yeah, Delanie Walker is the guy that I will not be drafting anywhere near his ADP.
It's a take, man. I mean, I see his targets going down. I don't think he falls out of tight end 1 range, but I definitely wouldn't draft him where he's being taken right now.
Well, guys, that's all we have for today's show. Jody, we really appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Anytime.
All right, guys and gals. Well, we really appreciate you listening. Hope you have a great 4th of July with your families. Thanks for listening and enjoy your football.
I just wanted you to watch me dissolve.